Hey guys, this is Dinosaur Drawer, and this is part 3 on how to draw the baby Rex from Jurassic Park The Lost World. Alright, so I think it's time to get more detail into his leg, so we will quickly do that. First thing we need to do is very gently put down the lines of where his huge muscles actually go. And then over here we have a line like this, which goes all the way up there. And then this line goes kind of like this. A lot of wrinkles from over here actually. A lot of wrinkles. And you might want to make them a little bit darker at some points. Alright. Something like this should be fine. And now we can start putting in a couple of wrinkles and lines everywhere on the top of his hip, well, top of his leg actually. Something like this, and then put a couple of thinner lines on top of it. And then these lines actually kind of go like this. Very strange. And over here they start getting a little lighter, and there's also something like this over here. And again over here they're starting to get a little bit lighter. They kind of change direction a little bit. And then over here we are starting to get closer to his knee. His knee is actually kind of strange. And then there's a couple of lines from over there. Then there are just a couple of thin lines which are pretty dark actually. So make sure you sharpen your pencil before getting into this part. Alright, starting to look quite nice. So now let's move on a little bit further down. There's a little bit of shadow from over here going all the way till over there. And all these lines are starting to come together there. And there's a little bit of shadow over here. Well, actually a lot of shadow. And then it goes, it kind of extends all the way until over there. And then you have this kind of bone shape thing here. And this bone shaped thing right here. But let's first finish this part. And over here it's just very messy, but it doesn't really matter because it looks kind of okay, because those lines are just so thin. It doesn't really stand out too much. Over here the lines are starting to get closer to the shadow. This is actually a little bit of a highlight. And now we also do need to pay attention to where the lines are supposed to be a little bit darker because of the shadow of the muscles and stuff. So just putting in a little bit of tone variation over here. And there is a little bit of shadow here. And also a little bit of shadow there. And over there. So some lines you can put a little bit more shadow on. For example, over here I could put more of shadow, a little bit more shadow. This will still make it look very detailed. And this line is supposed to be a lot darker. Alright. And let's go down onto his little feet. Something like that. And then over here you have this kind of line going like this, and a little bit of shadow over it. Also over here, but make sure to leave that highlight over there. And then this is supposed to go a little bit further down, and then there are a couple of lines going like this. just put a couple of them in between this part, and you could do the same with those kind of scaly lines over here. And just darken in those parts a little. And do the same over here. And this one doesn't have to be as detailed. So this is starting to look quite nice. Now I want to have a little bit more shadow over here on these lines. Just up there a little bit more, and then I want these wrinkles to stand out over there, and then they just kind of fade into the rest of the drawing, I guess. And then you just do the tail the same way as you did the neck. Just let them run over each other, and also over here you can just keep on adding the detail. And of course you want to have a couple of lines, a couple of details that actually stand out the most at some parts. Not everywhere of course, but at some certain parts. And this actually turns out to be quite a nice technique to do dinosaur scales and details. So I might actually use this more often in the future. So actually we want to follow a certain line, a certain path, which actually disappears around here. So we actually, and that's also a very dark part, so that's where we want to make our scales kind of come from. It's just random kind of lines, and then of course put a couple of them like this, and that one is a little bit out of place because it was a little bit too dark, but sometimes you can use your eraser to fix some things. Try and keep it at the same tone. It's kind of difficult to do because now we're getting at the more narrow parts, and at the more narrow parts you are well, I'm afraid to actually make mistakes, so that's why I sometimes change the tone, because I'm not pressing down hard enough on my pencil. But you need to make sure that everything is at about the same tone. And I also sometimes have the tendency to accidentally make the tail part too dark. So it's really hard to get everything at the right tone and stuff. At least it's hard for me sometimes. For example, I can see right now that the tail part is way too dark compared to the rest. And then on the bottom part of the tail, you just make those kind of lines like this. But make sure to get the bits of shadow in that you really need. So now that I'm making the tail even darker, that means that some parts I will have to go over them and make them even darker. So this kind of means that, for example, this could be a lot more dark, and over here as well. At some parts I could add a little bit more shadow. For example, over here, just a tiny bit more. Maybe here a little bit more. And of course a little bit more over here as well, in his knee. And let's see, there could be a little bit more shadow over here as well. And then on the bottom of those wrinkles you can make them a little bit darker to get that tone just right. Make it a little bit darker over there. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit more shadow over here. So it's kind of starting to look right. So also around this shadow kind of area you could put a little bit more darker lines near the shadow area, the shadowy part, so that it looks more realistic and a little bit sharper. Just keep doing that. Until it looks about right. I'm sorry for the noises. And also on top of this hip you also have a couple of lines going down like this sometimes. And I really want to make this a little darker because it just seems to be a little bit too light. And especially on this part of the tail. And also what I should do is make the top of the tail a little bit darker as well. Just putting in those darker lines here and there. And then I think I'm gonna stop around here somewhere. And now I can just put a little bit more shadow on it until the length of its whole tail. Something like this. And also put the detail in over here. So for example, this is his knee again, so there's going to be a lot of actual lines going on there, and of course this bit of shadow again. Something like that. And then there's going to be a little shadow like this, and a bit of shadow over here, of course. And this is just almost like one big highlight over there. And make it clear that this is actually his stomach and not his leg. And then just a couple of lines again, muscles and tendons. Like this, over here as well. And we could just, this part very dark. And I think I'd like to keep this like how it is right now. not disturb it too much. Alright, and now it's time to actually get his, there's kind of something like a pattern on his skin, which kind of goes like, well, let's see, kind of goes like this. Just put it in very, very lightly. You would barely be able to see it if you put it in very lightly. And what we want to create is a look that you can only kind of see if you really take your time looking at it and put this kind of pattern, especially on the parts like this. And get something like a curve in it. Something like this. And then you can do the same over here, but make some certain spots that you can see it. Alright. And also try and put it on his tail just a tiny little bit, especially on the parts that are the lightest. Just now and then make sure you get that kind of detail in, and especially on the slender part of his tail, because there is less detail there. So that's the part where you want to put these kind of stripes down the darkest, so it's best visible at these parts. Alright, so we are about done. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit, so I'll be back. Alright, so I'm back and I'm gonna put in my autograph right here. And then the name of the dinosaur, I'm just gonna call it Baby Rex. Alright, so there we have it, all done. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you actually learned something from it. And yeah, if you liked the video, leave a like, comment below what you think about the drawing and the video in general. And don't forget to subscribe. So this was Dinosaur Drawer, and goodbye.